Ken Smetters at Wharton School's professor of business and public policy. He's also a veteran Fed watcher, of course, and worked at the Fed and the Treasury. And he joins us from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania this morning. Ken, it's good to have you back on the program. First of all, what did you think of what the Fed decided to do? Didn't they kind of backtrack a bit, extending the ultra-low interest rate statement until at least the late 2014?
Yeah, they did by about maybe 6 months or so, in the sense that previously they had talked about 2014, maybe middle of the year, but then now they've pushed it back maybe another 6 months toward the end of the year. But as you pointed out, the bigger statement on the potential for another QE3 was probably even the bigger news.
Yeah, but do you think he's actually going to pull the trigger? I was talking to an investor earlier on who was expecting a recession in the U.S., but what's your view? I mean, I know he's talking the talk, but does he want to keep his powder dry until it's fully necessary? Will it be necessary?
It's a good. He's an option player, so he definitely wants to keep his options open and to gather as much data. If the data comes in negatively over the next potentially 6 months to a year, I actually think he will pull the trigger. And the reason why is inflation is still pretty low, and so that gives him a fair amount of opportunity to potentially do another easing.
Okay. Well, you know, in the last few meetings, coming off in the press conference after the decision, you heard Bernanke in the Fed talking about growth. You know, growth is stronger than expected, unemployment coming back, but now they seem to be pulling back a bit, saying inflation is going to be subdued, but then unemployment is not going to change very much in the next few months.
That's right. I mean, he referred to unemployment as elevated. He talked about business investment, which is one of their key metrics, as slowing. Business investment already he had not taken off the way it should have at this point, and so the fact that it was maybe even backtracking is a problem. The reason why I think he's really serious about potentially pulling the trigger is simply some of the language is much more aggressive than in the past. In the past, they've emphasized a lot more of the kind of interest rate triggers and so forth. Today, he talked much more directly about the Fed's balance sheet, and so I think he's going to gather more data, but I think he is serious. We could see something again in 6 months from now.
Yeah, Kent, any concerns from you that the Fed lowered its forecast for growth, not only for this year, but also next year as well? And some are saying 2%, 1% growth is pretty stagnant for the U.S. economy.
It is, and it's just simply not enough to create a lot of jobs. And I think I was surprised. On one hand, gold reacted quite a bit. The rest of the markets didn't react as aggressively, say, as the gold market. And so it was a little bit of a water on the recent kind of good news. But I do think he's being a realist and understanding over the next 6 months, a year, we're still face a lot of headwinds.
Okay, well, the market's saying that Bernanke is sounding a bit dovish. So leave me with this, Ken. So what do you think the probability is of him pulling the trigger and using QE3?
I would say over the next 6 months, I would give it a 50-50 probability. I think it's. I think you're not going to see it in the next, say, 3 months is my guess. But if the data continues to come in where what we see today, in particular, if they still feel that business investment is still slowing down even more than what they talked about today, and inflation continues to stay pretty low, then I think that the probability of them doing it is actually pretty high.
Okay, well, you're pretty much an options player as well, Kent. Good talking to you. Thanks for that.
Right.
Ken Smetters of the Wharton School joining us from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.